Vietnam's stock market looks to strong 2025.
Hello and welcome to this week's edition of BizLive. In 2024, despite the complicated fluctuations of the world's macroeconomy, the government close management has helped the Vietnamese economy grow positively and business production activities have recovered. And thanks to that, the Vietnamese stock market in 2024 maintained stable, safe, smooth, and growing operations. And this year, FTSE may recognize Vietnam as eligible for upgrading in the March 2025 review period. Although not officially included in the FTSE Emerging Index basket, expectation from domestic investors as well as foreign capital flow will bring positive trading sentiment to the market. And today, we invited to the studio Mr. Matthew Smith, Head of Institutional Research, Quanta Vietnam Security Company, to understand more about this marketplace. And thank you so much for joining our program. According to data, by the end of 2024, the VN Index reached 1,266.78 points, up 12.1% compared to the end of 2023. The stock market capitalization reached 5.21 trillion, up 14.3% compared to the end of 2023. So what do these numbers say?
Yeah, well, it was an okay year, I think, for Vietnam stocks, if we only consider the year-on-year change, in other words, how the market changed between December 31st and January 1st. Market, as you say, was up 12%, which is roughly in line with earnings growth in the same year. And our numbers, earnings growth for the listed entities on the Ho Chi Minh City Stock Exchange were up by about 10%. The other thing that's interesting is that this 12% increase in the VN Index also occurred basically in line with nominal GDP growth. As everyone knows, GDP growth was 7.1%, but that's in real terms. In nominal terms, which includes inflation, the number was closer to 11%. As far as market cap goes, yeah, you're right. The market cap of the VN of the Ho Chi Minh City Stock Exchange is roughly bit more than 200 billion US dollars, which is around 45% of GDP. If we look at a comparable, I guess, a slightly more developed market in Southeast Asia, Thailand, the GDP of Thailand is slightly larger than Vietnam's at around 550 billion US dollars. But the market cap of Thailand is much larger than Vietnam's. It's actually higher than GDP. So the market cap to GDP in Thailand is over 100%. It's not growing as fast as Vietnam is, but also Vietnam's is only about 40%, which suggests that there's a lot of upside, I think, for Vietnam equities going forward. Within that market cap number, I think another thing that we need to discuss is the free float of the market, which in Vietnam, like many frontier markets at this stage of development, the free float of the shares, meaning the shares that actually transact and are not owned by major shareholders that don't sell, is only about 45%. So if we look at the free float market cap to GDP, it's probably 20%. So it's actually quite low, and again, that's not something to be sad about, because it actually implies that there's a huge amount of growth potential for Vietnam equities in the years ahead.
By the end of 2024, the liquidity of the Vietnamese stock market ranked third in Southeast Asia after the Thai and Singaporean markets. So what factor helped Vietnam achieve this result?
That's a good point. It's actually the market liquidity last year came in a little bit south of came in, I think, about 850 billion US dollars on average. In the first half of the year, it was close to $1 billion. And then, of course, it unfortunately declined in the second half of the year. But on a full year basis, you're right, it was the third most liquid market on an ADT, average daily turnover, basis in Southeast Asia. The interesting thing about Vietnam is that the individual investors, domestic individuals, so Vietnamese punters, actually make up a much larger component of total trading than the individuals in Thailand and certainly the individuals in Singapore. And what I mean by that is both of those markets have much larger institutional presence. So institutional investors, meaning foreign institutions, but also domestic institutions. In Vietnam, the domestic institutional base in equities is actually quite small. The foreigners are a much bit larger component of that, but even last year, foreign institutional turnover was only about 10% of total trading. So in contrast to a place like Thailand, where arguably there may be fewer individual investors in Thailand that are actually active in the market than in Vietnam. But what Thailand does have is a much larger component both of foreign institutions but also domestic institutions. And that domestic side of the business is something that again, Vietnam hasn't really developed. But I think going forward, that's going to be an exciting thing to watch over the next, say, 10 years.
Information technology, IT stocks in Vietnam are attracting significant attention from both domestic and foreign investors due to their rapid growth, driven by strong digital transformation in businesses and government. The trend of investing in technology companies is spreading globally, and Vietnam is no exception. Foreign investors are seeking opportunities in emerging markets like Vietnam, where the economy maintains stable growth. IT stocks typically have high liquidity in the stock market, appealing to both short-term and long-term investors. Many technology stocks, such as FPT, VNG, and CMG, have demonstrated impressive profitability in recent times. Vietnamese IT stocks are currently a bright spot in the stock market, offering numerous opportunities for investors amid the context of robust digital transformation and technological development.
And which sector stocks are most attractive to investors in 2024 and why?
Well, I mean, you can see it from the share price trends. By far, the best performing sector as a whole was IT, technology, in 2024. And of course, that's really being led by one stock. The only large cap technology stock in Vietnam is FPT. FPT, I think, was up by about 60% year on year in 2024. Phenomenal result for this stock, but also it's being driven by the growth and the profitability of that business. So that business, I think, has attracted a lot of interest, both because of its underlying fundamental operations, but also on a narrative perspective. In other words, in the second half of last year, globally, everybody was getting excited about AI, about stocks such as NVIDIA, which, as you've seen, has skyrocketed in the past couple of years. And I think FPT caught a little bit of that sentiment from domestic investors in particular. Interestingly, foreigners, foreign institutions, I should say, are largely overweight FPT. In other words, FPT tends to be among the top holdings of most of the foreign funds that are active in Vietnam. And as the share price soars considerably by, as I said, 60% last year, that actually becomes a problem for those investors because they have mandates where they can only hold a certain percentage of their fund in any particular stock. Two sectors that outperformed in 2024. One was the financials, in particular the banks. Banks did extremely well. Certain banks did extremely well last year. Again, this is being driven, I think, by their underlying fundamentals, but also they're coming off of very low valuations. Again, the reason why they've been cheap for a long time really has to do with the property market. So if and when the property market upcycle occurs, when the market starts to pick up in property, I think we'll see a reflation of the banks. So we're still relatively positive on the banks at current valuations. The other sector that I think did well was consumer discretionary. Stocks like Mobile World, like FRT, coming off of very low expectations from 2022 and 2023, which were tough years for those businesses. Actually, things started to turn around, both because they have changed their business model to focus on different aspects of retail. In the case of FRT, that would be the healthcare and pharmaceuticals business, and with Mobile World, groceries. So but also their electronics businesses, which had been underperforming for the past few years, actually did okay last year. There was actually growth in both Mobile World and FRT's electronics retail businesses. So those stocks did pretty well.
Banking sector stocks in Vietnam often attract investors for several reasons. Stable growth. The banking sector has the ability to generate stable profits from lending activities and financial services, making it appealing to investors seeking safety. Attractive valuation. Compared to many other sectors, bank stocks may be valued with a lower PE, price-to-earnings ratio, presenting opportunities for higher returns when the market recovers. High liquidity. Banking stocks typically have good liquidity, allowing investors to easily convert stocks into cash when needed. Government support policies. The Vietnamese government often implements policies to encourage the development of the banking sector, thereby creating a favorable environment for long-term growth of banks. Technology advancement. The shift towards technology in the banking sector, including the development of digital banking and fintech services, attracts many new investors. Rising credit demand. With the economic growth in Vietnam, the demand for loans from individuals and businesses will continue to increase, supporting the development of banks.
Trong năm 2025 thì chúng ta thấy rằng là ngành ngân hàng có một số những cái điểm thuận lợi. Thứ nhất là cái tăng trưởng kinh tế dự báo là cũng sẽ đạt cái mức 8% với cái nỗ lực và cái mục tiêu mà chính phủ đề ra. Và tăng trưởng kinh tế như vậy thì rõ ràng là hỗ trợ rất lớn cho cái hoạt động của các thị trường tài chính, và cụ thể là hỗ trợ rất lớn cho hoạt động của các ngân hàng thương mại khi mà nguồn vốn sẽ gia tăng. Và tất cả những cái điều này cho thấy là cái cổ phiếu của ngân hàng, theo cá nhân tôi đánh giá, thì đã giữ được cái mức độ ổn định và cũng có thể có những cái điểm tích cực đối với rất là nhiều các ngân hàng thương mại cổ phần, đặc biệt các ngân hàng thương mại cổ phần có cái thị trường, cái thị phần lớn, cũng như là có cái hiệu quả hoạt động cao, và những cái ngân hàng mà vốn dĩ hiện nay đang được đánh giá là những cái blue chip ở trên thị trường.
Investors need to closely monitor these factors and conduct thorough research before deciding to invest in banking stocks. Analyzing financial reports, market updates, and economic forecasts will help investors make more informed decisions.
So will the above stock maintain their appeal in 2025?
Well, I think we're starting to see. Well, let's start with the banks. The banking sector, I think, remains relatively cheap. It's not as cheap as it was 12 months ago, but it's still offering considerable value relative to the underlying profitability. So we have banks, particularly the JSC banks, that are trading at 1.1, 1.2 times book, with ROEs pushing 20% or higher. And I think that still presents an opportunity for longer-term investors. I think that there's probably some room for improvement in the steel industry, which again underperformed last year. But given pledges from the government to spend more in terms of rolling out infrastructure construction within Vietnam, which I think is necessary both for the longer-term economy, but also to achieve this year's economic growth targets. I think we could see some upside from the steel industry this year. Again, it's a very cyclical industry, so sometimes it sells down when things slow down, but when things pick up, you can see some sharp rises there.
Well, now FTSE may recognize Vietnam as eligible for an upgrade in March 2025 review, although it has not been officially included in the emerging index. Expectations from domestic investors as well as foreign capital flows are expected to bring positive trading sentiment to the market. So what signals will this information bring to the Vietnamese stock market?
The FTSE Russell emerging markets upgrade is definitely a topic of extreme interest certainly in my industry. But the announcement will be they intend to upgrade Vietnam into the emerging markets index, not that they are upgrading it in September. The way this works is a gradual process. So FTSE, when they upgrade a country, they first state to the world that they are planning to upgrade that country either in 6 months' time from the date that they issue their announcement, or in 12 months' time. And the difference between 6 months and 12 months has to do with how long it typically is expected to take for their clients to open accounts and get set up in the country that they are upgrading. Now, in the case of Vietnam, I think that the timeline between the announcement and the actual upgrade is likely to be 12 months. I think that it's positive, regardless of exactly when it occurs. I think it is definitely a good thing for Vietnam that we will see inflows of foreign capital It won't be huge from the FTSE upgrade. FTSE is relatively small, but it does set up the expectation for continued reforms to occur over the next several years that will eventually lead to an upgrade by MSCI. MSCI is much larger. The amount of funds that are benchmarked to the MSCI Emerging Markets Index is far larger than FTSE Russell's indexes. So that is a much more meaningful upgrade when it occurs.
One of the securities sector's key priorities this year is strengthening market oversight through enhanced surveillance, inspections, and strict penalties for violations. The revised securities law, now in effect, clearly defines 6 types of market manipulation and outlines specific enforcement measures. Those who spread rumors or incite buying and selling in group chats to artificially inflate stock prices will face penalties.
Họ tạo ra các Zoom xong họ hô hào về cổ phiếu, họ tạo ra cung cầu ảo cho cổ phiếu và sau đó thì khi mà cổ phiếu rơi thì các Zoom biến mất thì nó cũng cái việc luật hóa này tôi nghĩ nó giúp cái thị trường nó minh bạch hơn.
Actions that mislead investors, such as groups repeatedly buying and selling the same stock or trading continuously within a session, have now been specifically defined as illegal forms of market manipulation.
Nhà đầu tư người ta bị hiểu lầm đó là một cái cổ phiếu đang là giao dịch tích cực, mà trong khi đó thì thực tế rằng là chỉ có một nhóm các tài khoản họ thực hiện mua đi bán lại nội bộ với nhau mà không dẫn đến những cái hoạt động chuyển nhượng thực tế. Và đấy là một cái yếu tố mà cơ quan quản lý người ta cũng có thể căn cứ để có thể kết luận đấy là hành vi thao túng thị trường.
Clear definition of prohibited actions and fraudulent behaviors in the law will provide a basis to carry out inspections and take action against violations.
Đặc biệt, luật chứng khoán lần này thì cũng phân cấp phân quyền rất là cụ thể, nâng cao cái tính trách nhiệm của các cái tổ chức cá nhân tham gia vào các cái thành lập các cái báo cáo như báo cáo về hồ sơ phát hành, hồ sơ niêm yết.
By meeting the conditions set by rating agencies, along with increasing transparency in the stock market, Vietnam aims to achieve its goal of upgrading its stock market status in 2025.
Well, in recent time, thanks to the drastic action from the government, Vietnam has improved the last 2 criteria for FTSE to upgrade, which are improving the delivery versus payment process (DVP) and the rate transaction failure rate have been assessed. So how do you evaluate this effort?
The authorities have allowed the local brokers effectively to take on the risks of pre-funding. And I think that is obviously a positive move for Vietnam. And this is basically establishing pre-funding or eliminating the need for pre-funding for foreign institutions and establishing a mechanism to handle failed trades were the last 2 requirements of FTSE Russell to upgrade Vietnam into emerging markets, which is why I think it will come. The issue here, I think, is that not all of the global asset managers have actually registered for pre-funding yet. So they haven't actually necessarily tested it out.
And last but not least, can you give some comments on the Vietnamese stock market from now until the end of 2025 and recommendations to help Vietnam achieve the goal of upgrading the market?
As far as the stock market in 2025 goes, we are actually quite positive on it. Certainly for the last 3 quarters of 2024. So yeah, every time we get into this range of 1280 to 1300 on the VN index, it doesn't seem to be able to push through that sustainably. And we're back there today. I think the market this morning was trading up toward 1280. So again, eventually we will get through that 1300 barrier. Getting through all that, I think, will require, from a technical analyst perspective, would require greater volumes than we've seen year to date. I wouldn't take too much importance to the weak turnover of January, because this is, of course, between the sort of the Christmas and Gregorian New Year holidays and the Tet holidays that occurred at the end of the month. People were sort of in holiday mode for the entire month. So, of course, January's flows were quite weak, the lowest in 2 years. But they're starting to pick up now, and I think that if we continue to see positive news flow coming out in terms of policies from the government, that can certainly help to increase interest in the domestic stock market again. And really, what we need to happen is for individual investors to get excited again. And the other thing that really will carry the Vietnam market forward really is the domestic economy, which last year despite the 7.1% GDP growth, the domestic drivers of that were relatively soft. And what I mean by that is domestic spending, domestic consumption, as well as the property market. Our house view is that the property market upcycle, which has basically the market has bottomed already, but it hasn't really picked up strongly. We think that the cycle for the property market will pick up much more strongly in the second half of 2025. And that obviously leads to, as I said, a reflation of the banks. The bank stocks should reflect that. But it also means that property stocks, of course, property developer stocks should start to help to drive up. If we start to see consumer sentiment broadly, domestic consumer sentiment, not just tourists, pick up in 2025, then I think that 1539, my index target, should be easily achieved.
Continuing the positive growth momentum of 2024, entering 2025, the stock market needs to have strong changes toward sustainable development and continue to remove obstacles related to market upgrading. According to experts, 2025 will have many unpredictable and unstable factors, but Vietnam still has many opportunities to achieve the GDP growth target set by the government. And these positive factors will continue to be the foundations for the Vietnamese stock market to maintain stability and growth in both scales and quality. And now, once again, thank you for joining our program. And that's also wrapped up this edition of BizLive. To rewatch our program, you can log on to our website, vtvgo.vn, or download our mobile application, VTV Go. And thanks for watching, and goodbye for now.